At Preston City Council, we're very proud for our city to be such a diverse city with people from different continents around the world. Of the 10% of the people from South Asia, they're mainly from India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, and they share with us their traditions. They bring a lot of heritage and different cultures. Especially with this being the South Asian Heritage Month, we will be showing a video that was made in Lancashire a few years ago, talking to people of their experiences of living in Lancashire from the different districts and different cities within Lancashire itself, sharing their experiences of their heritage, of the challenges that they face and the challenges ahead of them as well. The film shows the vibrancy and the different cultures across the county, and hope you can share this experience and enjoy the film.
What I'd like to achieve is where everybody is really pleased about the kind of community we've got. The future lies in diverse communities.
Because there's so many nice people in it and there's so many nice shops.
Coming from Scotland, it's been my home for the last almost 30 years and I truly love Lancashire. I'm a red rose now.
I love that you can make friends with anybody.
There's just lots of close communities and it really brings a lot of people together. There's a lot of LGBT events, there's a lot of different diverse events for different religions locally, and I think it's really interesting.
Even if we think of the textile industry, just over 100 years ago, Lancashire was producing 85% of the world's cotton.
We've got some of the best countryside in Britain, we've got some of the best people in Britain. I wouldn't live anywhere else.
Welcome to Lancashire. My name is Kaya and I was hired by Lancashire BME Network to create a film about Lancashire and its challenges towards breaking down stereotypes and integration.
Lancashire's had a lot of bad publicity in terms of segregation, lack of integration, communities not working together, cohesion. We've had lots of issues where there's been riots in the past, etc. So I think this is going to be a really good event for highlighting how we can work together, and we do work together and live together.
The project required a skilled filmmaker, and this is why I got in touch with Pitch Dad so together we could explore the diverse communities of Lancashire and capture them on film. We felt the best way to see how diverse and integrated this community is to see how easy it is to make a film that would explore this idea of community cohesion.
If you went and read the newspapers every day, you wouldn't imagine that things like this go on. It matters that people see that communities can be cohesive and can work together for the greater good.
We went to a variety of events throughout Lancashire which aim to highlight cohesion and integration. We asked a variety of citizens on key issues surrounding diversity.
If you saw anything other than a white face when I was a child, it was quite unusual. And then there's obviously been a lot of people coming to live in this country. I think initially people found that really difficult because they couldn't understand the differences in culture, the difference in the way people behaved. I think everybody's learned.
It's changed a lot since I grew up. When I was growing up in Morecambe, I was only one of 3 children from a minority background. So, it's a very white area really. But since then, 20, 30 years on now, everything's changing. You see a lot more different faces around the city.
As I was growing up, it was quite acceptable for people to be openly racist, for you to be treated differently, for you to have things thrown at you, spat at, etc. It was quite the norm.
It's part of our jobs as a community group to kind of shift people's perspectives.
And our parents used to say, well, we live in their country, we've got to live by their rules and we've got to take whatever abuse comes our way because there's lots of benefits of living in this country. I think now as I've got older and I've got my own children, I don't see that I should have to always feel like it's a privilege that I live here. I'm born and bred here and I'd have as much right as the next person to have a home here.
I've lived all my life in Lancashire. To be part of the community, to give something to the community where I live, which has given me so much in my life, is very important to me and my family.
We know the Mills was a key factor in bringing individuals to this country from all over the world. But what brings people to Lancashire in this day and age?
I was in India for almost 30 years of my life, but we came here because my husband changed his job. A lot of diversity is here. In India, we don't see so many different cultures or so many different kind of people at the same place.
I arrived in Lancashire with my parents as a refugee from Uganda in 1973. It's always saying that we would eventually move somewhere else because there's not a lot of Sikh community, but we ended up staying. My Indian roots are very important to me. My black history is very important to me. My Lancashire is just as important.
I am in Preston over 52 years. Once I leave London and I move up here with my husband, I noticed one thing. Preston was a lot more friendly place to live and homely.
I didn't have any experience being away from home, and I came over with my son then, and he was like 11 months. So coming to a strange place, no one, it was a mixture of anxiety, nerves, everything, because they don't know what to expect.
I've worked with refugees and asylum seekers in Blackburn since 1979, and in general found people to be fine with those people who they understand the reasons they're here for.
من اینجا اومدم پناهنده‌ام، درخواست موندگی کردم اینجا و میخوام بمونم. کشور خوبیه برای من و اونایی که اینجا شهر داروینن واقعا ملاقاتشون با ما خیلی متفاوته، با ما خیلی رسیدگی میکنن به جا، برای همه خوبن، نه فقط برای من که ایرانی. هیچ فرقی نیست اینجا، احساس آرامش میکنیم اینجا هستیم.
از همه بهترتر که مکاتبش خیلی عالی است، خیلی به بچه‌ها میرسن. دو دختر همراه من اینجا خیلی خوش هستن، راضی هستن از مکتب و درس و همه چیز.
I was always brought up with people who came over and travelled, and having this wide world around us who can come together and give so much. It's just so interesting and fascinating, and when people need help, they need help. Whether they're from Africa or from Burnley or from Nelson.
Difficulties for people from BME backgrounds and people who've recently arrived are basically what all of us experience when we go to a country where we don't necessarily speak the language well, learning how to live in a different country with a different culture.
Not only this community is progressive, but the community that hosted us is progressive. The challenges we had to face with the English community, it shows you that the English community are very open to give us an experience and share this experience with us.
That's our most important principle, is to bring communities together, live in peace and harmony with everyone, to love everyone.
So far, everything seems to be moving in the right direction. But as we travelled all over Lancashire, we found some people who agreed with the stereotype that Lancashire lacks integration and community cohesion.
I think that's a very right stereotype. That's how it is. We're all living in our little bubbles in our world with people that are like us. In order to not be scared of differences, we have to learn. And it's a big effort.
There's a great division within the area. A lot of it's misconception of people.
There's quite a lot of evidence for resistance to certain people from outside moving into particular areas, and there's what's called white flight as well, which is when areas become, say, too heavily Asian in some people's eyes, then people tend to move out of that part of that city.
It also occurred to us that not all communities wanted to be involved in this film. We were given a short time frame of 2 months to make this film, and we wanted to be as inclusive as possible when it comes to capturing people from different backgrounds. However, as we tried to get in contact with certain communities, we found some resistance. We found that certain groups were not able to participate or did not want to be involved, which is a real shame. After hearing all these remarks about a lack of integration and the term white flight, we sat down with the former MP of Blackburn, Jack Straw, who featured in the Panorama documentary called The White Flight, which aired 10 years ago. He received a fair amount of backlash after his critique of the burqa, which is worn by some Muslim women. So of course we had to ask him about that and see if his opinion has changed at all over the years.
People tend to live in separate areas, and that's very hard to deal with because it's to do with impersonal forces. I know a lot of Asian friends who have moved into white areas in order that their children should have a mixed experience, and then they see this process of white flight taking place, which in one sense is nobody's fault, but I get so cross about the insinuation that most people of Asian heritage somehow want to live separate lives. They don't remotely. My view about the whole issue of diversity and community cohesion is that you achieve this not by making everybody the same, but by celebrating people's differences. That's what makes life interesting.
You're saying now that we should embrace other cultures and what they bring with them, but you said about 11 years ago that you were against the burqa, which is often a form of expression by some Muslim women. You received some negative feedback for those comments as well, haven't you?
There was a huge amount of controversy about it when I made it 11 years ago. A lady came to see me who I knew before, and I'd seen her when she had not been wearing a veil, and she sat down opposite me wearing a full veil and said without any trace of irony, "Mr. Straw, it's really nice to see you again face to face." And I thought about that afterwards. I then wrote my article saying that the full veil, in my view, is a barrier to communication and understanding. I mean, they cause a lot of argument and debate, which I think is a good thing, but it was very interesting how it opened up a debate within the Asian community, and it sort of gave permission for Asian women who didn't like wearing the veil to be able to speak out as well. I had as many Asian women coming up to me in town to say thank you for saying that, as those who said we really object to what you had to say.
So after seeing all these problems, you begin to wonder, is it getting better or is it just getting worse?
I think there's still communities where there is segregation and where people don't mix as well, but equally there are places where people live in harmony next to each other. They recognise their neighbours for people rather than the colour of their skin or their ethnic background or faith.
Surely there must be other pressures. Cultural differences and language barriers can't be the only issue which affects community cohesion.
There are pressures, and there's at the same time influences which affect those pressures. Aside from the ethnic issue, there's also this north-south divide issue. The northern part of England, for example, is, in my opinion, that we're far behind for some very crucial reasons. And one of them, and first and foremost, is the investment in the infrastructure. Linked with that, there's the funding element, but at the same time, it's actually targeting the group that we all know requires the attention. But then you're limited with your resources, you're limited with the funding background to that. So the BAME communities are, you could argue, to some degree, let down.
They gave more grants to local authorities around London. They are treated more favourably than the people in the north, and it has continued for years.
There are no provisions now left in the mainstream to support the ethnic minority groups. Funding is a critical thing for voluntary organisation.
But in terms of opportunities, there are opportunities out there. It's a case of unlocking those opportunities and making those groups see those opportunities.
Wherever we go, we should work collaboratively in order to get the facilities required for the community.
Another problem on top of all of this is hate crime. The number of hate crimes in England and Wales has increased by 29% since 2016, according to the Home Office statistics.
The first thing that somebody says to me, if I say I do something to do with hate crime, they'll say, oh, it's something to do with Muslims. That's what they say straight away. And I'll say, well, actually, it's a lot more complicated and a lot broader than that.
I've always faced racial discrimination by the very nature of being who I am. Being a woman, being Asian, being black, being stereotyped in things. It is a massive problem. And it is more so now with Brexit, jobs, with the current financial climate. You become a very easy target.
There's a blame culture and everybody wants to blame somebody else without really understanding it.
I think hate crime has been going on for many years. Primarily for me, it's bullying is hate crime. People tend to be isolated, and then what happens is that when they're isolated, they're picked on.
When I was young at school, knowing I couldn't walk and talk, so everyone was like bullying me, calling me names. I used to get upset by that as well, but now I can show myself up there and explain to people.
There is a lot of hate crime everywhere. Lancashire is no more or less likely for it to happen than anywhere else.
The challenges are still there because wherever I go, people are still ignorant, and there are sort of misunderstanding, misconception of different culture. They don't associate you with what you are, so there is still stereotype are there.
Trans hate crime, there is a lot. Reported trans hate crime, nothing. Trans people in general don't trust the police. They don't trust that they will be dealt with properly. The same is true, I suspect, of quite a lot of communities. They simply don't realise that the police are there to help.
Discrimination of colour will never stop because this is from generation back. You can educate and you can talk about it, but it's that individual person and how they want to go further from it.
I think there is a rise in discrimination, and I think that's again due to fear and an uprising of a far right. But in general, I feel that people are more sympathetic when they understand and see what's really happening in lives.
If we do more events together and actually be together, that's the only way we can learn about each other, break down the stereotypes that we have.
I work with different people in society for a long while, and I've tried to bring communities together from every section of society, but it's hard work.
It's about giving people an understanding and letting people know that we've got more in common than differences, and that we can sit down and we can share our shared values, our shared humanity, making people familiar with what they may think is unfamiliar or a little bit abstract or foreign.
It's one of those things which will change with different generations coming up. The newer generations are less inclined to be bigoted in the same way that old generations were.
Because I'm a teacher, I do my best to educate the young people, and I feel like it starts from there because sometimes their parents have quite negative views. They believe that some Muslims are terrorists. They actually come into school and say things like that. So we're there as teachers just to get rid of those stereotypes. Oh, Miss, you're actually quite sorted. I thought you weren't going to be. Miss, why'd you wear the headscarf?
Children, being children, will ask all sorts of questions, and they are good questions they are asking because they have got an inquiring mind.
So our hope lies within the new generation coming up and educating them on different cultures and people from different backgrounds. So we went to Blackburn Youth Zone and asked the young people there on their opinions surrounding diversity.
I think it's very exciting because I get to see other people from other countries, seeing how they dress and speak.
Sometimes the way they approach things is a lot different than the way I would, and I think it's quite interesting learning about it because you get to realise that there's not always everyone's the same, everyone's different, and you get to understand what they kind of think about as well.
They might not have a home in their other background and they could tell us something interesting about the country.
It's evident that people of Lancashire want to strive for the best, and this place has definitely progressed since it first welcomed people of different backgrounds. But although it welcomes people from all different walks of life, it still has a long way to come in terms of integration.
When we use the word BME, we need to embrace it's not just about visually different people, it's people whose language and ways and lifestyles are different.
The people of Lancashire are really moving in the right direction as far as community cohesion is concerned.
I want to be in a world where we don't see the colour of somebody's skin, and that's what I will always strive to work for.
We come from many parts of the world, but here we are and we're all Lancashire.
My parents always instilled in me that if you try your best at whatever you do, skies aren't the limit. They say sky's the limit, but sky's not the limit.
One thing is for sure, this county's people will never stop trying.
Just smile and it makes the world rather a better place.